Hello. Welcome to Wednesday afternoon. Well, you know, it's Wednesday afternoon here where I am, but welcome everybody. I hope that you're having a good week. It's about halfway done. I feel like the lighting is slightly unusual today. I don't know why, but I ran out of time, so this is what we got. It'll be fine. You know, once my head is smaller, you won't even notice. Anyway, I hope, as I said, that you're all having a great day. Hello, Key Squared. Thank you for the resubscription. It is great to have you joining. Hannah, it's lovely to see you. Everybody who's hanging out, thanks for being here. Let me see that I have everything prepared and ready to go for, let's see, of course, we like to start our stream with a check-in on Virginia Tech's statement regarding land and labor, considering that we look at historical items and therefore paying attention to the history of the location where the institution is located, a good thing to do. So, there, yes. There's a delay, and it seems to be like a 5 to 7 second delay between me knowing whether I clicked a button and it worked or not. Virginia Tech acknowledges that we live and work on the Tutelo and Monacan people's homeland, and we recognize their continued relationships with their lands and waterways. We further acknowledge that the Morrill Land Grant College Act of 1862 enabled the Commonwealth of Virginia to finance and found Virginia Tech through the forced removal of Native nations from their lands in Western territories. We understand that honoring Native peoples without explicit material commitments falls short of our institutional responsibilities. Through sustained, transparent, and meaningful engagement with the Tutelo and Monacan peoples and other Native nations, we commit to changing the trajectory of Virginia Tech's history by increasing Indigenous student, staff, and faculty recruitment and retention, diversifying course offerings, and meeting the growing needs of all Virginia tribes and supporting their sovereignty. Virginia Tech acknowledges that its Blacksburg campus sits partly on land that was previously the site of the Smithfield and Solitude plantations, owned by members of the Preston family. Between the 1770s and the 1860s, the Prestons and other local white families that owned parcels of what became Virginia Tech also owned hundreds of enslaved people. We acknowledge that enslaved Black people generated wealth that financed the predecessor institution to Virginia Tech, the Preston and Olin Institute, and they also worked on construction of its building. Not until 1953, however, was the first Black student permitted to enroll. Through inclusive VT, the institutional and individual commitment to ACROSIM, that I may serve, In the spirit of community, diversity, and excellence, we commit to advancing a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive community. Let me get the next screen ready to go, because it is not quite in place. How is the volume on the audio? I'm running that from a different machine today, so I don't know if it is normal for you. It's loud for me. I'm lowering it for myself. Music is a bit loud. Okay. We will bump that down. I really would love to know. There's got to be a more effective way that I can adjust the music volume. I just haven't found it yet. I don't have access to all of everywhere that the chords go, and so I don't know. I haven't found a setting on the one machine that I know that the music goes into that will let me adjust the volume there, and I can't. It doesn't seem like it is in the soundboard at all, where the microphone volume can be adjusted. So it seems like the only place I can adjust it is the computer that the music is playing from, and the volume for the output device doesn't exist. There is no such. The only way I can adjust the volume for the music that you hear is adjusting it on Pretzel, and right now it's set to 9%. So there's not much more down I can do. And I've looked, and I just have never found any other way of adjusting it for you, which is not super. Anyway, today's focus for the stream is recent additions in one of our main collecting areas, which is the American Civil War. So these are going to be materials that are primarily 1860s era United States. Some of them are letters from soldiers. Some of them are definitely like about battles, but not all of them, which I'm kind of excited by. The fact that not all of them are what I would have expected from a Civil War collection. I don't spend a lot of time looking at this subject area at all. It's not one that I have a ton of experience with. So I think this will be interesting. This will be an adventure, funnily enough, since, that is sort of the name of the game for this show, is adventure, right? Okay, let's see. I'm just making sure that I've got, because as always, my setup for the stream is slightly different today than it has been in the past. This should surprise none of you. Yes, that is much better. We will go with that, and then this. So how has everybody been doing? Have you learned anything new lately? Any interesting tidbits that you've run across? Anybody visit an archives? Have you read some historical documents? Learned some science? We look at a lot of aerospace stuff. Did you learn anything new there? I would love it if people, shared that kind of thing. While you're thinking about that, of course, on screen right now is the list of the materials that I have pulled for today. These are the possible things that we will look at. Gosh, that was unpleasant looking. But we have the Philip G. Peltz Journal. We have the George W. Shue Diary Pages, the T.B. Heck and A.D. Elliott Broadside, the John R. Little Certificate of Honorable Service, a Carte de Visite of Buttermilk drinkers, the Charles W. Hardin Collection, and the James R. Purdue Family Collection. Links are present in that document. That document has been linked in the chat. If you want to see what each of these is all about, those are the links to go to in order to find out. All of them take you to a site called Archival Resources of the Virginias. Wow. They will all take you to our finding aids housed on this site. And if any of those collections seems particularly interesting, do let me know so that I can make sure that I get to those materials today, because unsurprisingly, at least for regular viewers, I have more than we will be able to get to on stream today. So nothing new yet. I haven't started the books you got this week. Yeah, keep us updated when you do, because I'd love to hear what you think of the books that you got. Let's try switching over to a document view, and sorry, the writing is so tiny. There, that is where I want to be. Top-down camera. I have done an initial glance at the items, at the collections, and I wrote some notes to myself about, like, hey, we should look at these. You gotta love coffins. So I'm gonna start. Honestly, I'm gonna start with coffins, I think, which is the Broadside by T.B. Heck and A.D. Elliott from 1865. Let me find out which one that is. Is that the big one? I think that's the big one. Nope, that's the little. Here we are. Does everybody know what a broadside is? In case you don't, a broadside is basically just like an advertisement, an advertising poster of sorts. Only the broadside of a barn. Well, a broadside is an advertisement that was meant to essentially be put on the broadside of a building, or so it could have been pasted up on the broadside of a barn. That would have been an appropriate spot for it. I can get like an official definition. I love that all of the initial definitions are about firing cannon, which is definitely, there is a meaning of broadside associated with firing cannon. Okay, broadside. This is from Merriam-Webster. A sizable sheet of paper printed on one side, or a sheet printed on one or both sides and folded, or something such as a ballad printed on a broadside. That's less helpful. Archaic, the side of a ship above the waterline. Let's see, all of the guns on one side of a ship, also their simultaneous discharge. A volley of abuse or denunciation. or a broad or unbroken surface. In the case that we are looking at the noun broadside that refers to a poster printed on one side. So, let's talk about advertising broadsides, or like broadsides, which are essentially just like poster adverts. Honestly, I assume it has been, I don't know, at least 5 or 6 years since I was in New York City. But it used to be in New York, you would see posters all over the place, advertising shows or things like that. And those are broadsides. Like somebody would just literally go around and just like paste a bunch of them to a wall. And I definitely know like a lot of places, especially college campuses, if a construction wall is put up, it quickly becomes covered in broadsides. Yeah, some amazing art on some of them as well, Key Squared. Yes, indeed, you are correct. So, as you can see here, I have in Mylar, I have the broadside itself. And then I also have this little card that is a caption. So I don't know specifically where we got it from. I'm going to look at that. T.B. Heck and A.D. Elliott broadside, dated 1865, written in English. I mean, I assumed it was purchased. Looking at the finding aid, I can confirm, yes, it was purchased from a dealer. What I don't know is, I don't know who wrote, because it's got a card backing, which tells me this was displayed somewhere, but I know nothing about like who wrote the caption, what they displayed it for, like that I don't know. There's a historical note and some biographical notes. I will read those for you. During the Civil War, many young men from Lexington, Virginia, both permanent residents and students of Virginia Military Institute and Washington College, enlisted in the Confederate military by 1862. In June of 1864, General David Hunter marched Union troops through the Shenandoah Valley and targeted Lexington. The Union Army fired artillery into the town, looted homes and businesses, and burned the VMI barracks, as well as Governor John Lecter's home. More broadly, across the former Confederacy, the destruction of infrastructure and the natural environment, along with the end of an enslavement-based agrarian economy, rising inflation, and failure to keep pace with the Union's evolving economic system, left much of the South with great financial setbacks after the Civil War. The local and national economic crisis left many Southerners unable to pay for goods with currency. This led to the use of bartering for goods as an alternative economy. The T.B. Heck and A.D. Elliott, Tilford Barclay Heck was born in Rockbridge County, Virginia in 1823. In 1850, he married Estelina M. Boyd in Albemarle County, Virginia. The pair had 7 children. Heck worked as a carpenter from early adulthood. In 1861, he enlisted in the Confederate Army in Rockbridge County. After the Civil War, Heck returned to Lexington and continued to work as a carpenter. He died in 1890 and was buried in Oak Grove Cemetery, Lexington, Virginia. A.D. Elliott, whose full name, or as much of the name as we know, is Andrew D. Elliott, was born in 1832 in Rockbridge County, Virginia. He married Georgia Ann Ligon in Rockbridge County in 1853, and he worked as a cabinet maker from early adulthood until his death circa 1870. So not as much info on him. I will read the caption, and then I'm actually going to read the broadside, because I enjoy reading broadsides. I've mentioned before that I like reading old advertisements, and this is an old advertisement, so it qualifies. But first, the caption that somebody used, I assume, in displaying this as part of an exhibit. I'm actually going to zoom in on the caption first, in case you want to read along. Hopefully it will be big enough that you can read it. Also, this could have just been like a sales placard, like maybe this was on display somewhere for sale. That would be unusual. Usually the things that we end up buying at auction sell very quickly. Rare advertising poster, 1865. This old poster was found in an old chest in Rockbridge County near Lexington, Virginia. In 1912, by an antique dealer. The firm that printed this poster is still in business in Lexington, Virginia, the Lexington Gazette. In the earlier years, many people in the country would drive to a village and buy a coffin from a dealer and conduct their own funerals. They would haul the coffin in a spring wagon to the graveyard. Many of the burials were in private graveyards on their farms. The dealers would take country produce, poultry, or lumber in exchange for coffins. This was apparently part of the collection of Warren Spitler in Virginia. This, to me, now that I've actually read it, my guess, and I don't know for sure, I don't have access to the database where the kind of information about the acquisition that I'm curious about is contained. Like, I can't access that from here. If I was downstairs, I could, but in this room I can't. So I don't have our acquisition details. I think this sort of provenance information was probably on the back at some point in the past when this was in a frame. And so I think the frame is gone, and that this was attached to the back of the framed item and was retained as provenance information. But that's just a guess on my part. Because knowing that it was found in 1912 by an antique dealer is information that some people would want. That it was found in an old chest in Rockbridge County. And Rockbridge County makes sense, since both T.B. Heck and A.D. Elliott were from Rockbridge County. I'm going to take it out of the plastic, which it seems in good enough condition to do that, and just because we get a slight glare in here, I'm going to take it out of the Mylar. Generally, once it's in the Mylar, we don't. But for the purposes of what I'm doing right now, and the fact that it's in decent condition, it's not like crumbling, I feel comfortable doing so. The border, yeah, the border is really pretty. I know a little bit about typesetting and fonts and stuff. I don't know as much about embellished borders like that, especially in older printing. We did get a hint of it. If you remember, I think it was last year, possibly the year before, honestly. Actually, it might have been, I think it was 2021. When we looked at Godey's Lady's Book, which we looked at for 2 weeks before looking at the Ladies' Home Journal. I think it was before. Might have been after. Godey's Lady's Book was also this, like roughly this time frame. and it was essentially a women's magazine. But in it, it included, as a regular feature, patterns like this that they would print in the book that you could then use. Now, I assume you would need to have like drawing skills to copy that, because they didn't have like copy machines or anything like that, but at least it would provide you with new patterns. You didn't have to come up with the patterns on your own. They were in a magazine, which I thought was really cool. But if actually, since we mentioned the border, before I read it, I'm gonna just zoom in a little bit on the border. So you can see it's a regular border. It's a repeating pattern, or a combination of multiple repeating patterns. So we've got this pattern here, which is one large embellishment with a string of like pearl-like dots, and that repeats at various locations. We've got this smaller segment that repeats. You've got 5 of them in sequence there. And then you have the corner piece. And so this border could have been done with just 3 stamps. Because you just need one corner piece, one of this larger piece, and one of the smaller piece, and you could do the border. Now that would take a long time. I imagine they probably had, if they were doing borders regularly, and whatever printer, Lexington, Virginia Gazette print, I would imagine that they probably had enough copies of these border pieces that they could build this border in its entirety, so that they could just do a single stamp to print each broadside, not requiring them to get it lined back up again or to swap out pieces. It is not perfect though. You can see here at the bottom right corner, if I can get it in the right spot on the table, this instance of the thin stamp, I don't know how they did that. Oh, wow. Oh. That is a different stamp altogether, and tells me that it's even more granular than I thought. Wow. Okay. Given the spaces you can see between each element, yeah, so it's possible. So I was seeing like that as one stamp and that as one stamp and the corner as one stamp. No. In fact, an individual stamp, I don't have another straight edge. Oh, yes, I do. So that, actually not even that, scooch it up a little bit here. That by itself is just one stamp. So that's one of the stamps. And then that piece is a stamp. But then the corner piece here, each of these, like that piece there is a stamp. And so that stamp is used 4 times to make the corner. And the way that I know that is because of the mistake. Because I initially thought that the corner piece was 1 stamp on its own, but the mistake here in the bottom row is the corner piece stamp used in the wrong spot. Which I just think is really cool. Like, oh, that to me, like, so that there's that single mistake that allowed me to recognize the amount of work, the amount of very particular, meticulous work involved in making that border. Whether they had multiples of the stamps or not, it's still very meticulous to get them all loaded in properly. And if it was, they had enough pieces to load in the entire border at once, they made a mistake. But that mistake is perfection because it shows the level of work involved and how amazingly well they did. I love this kind of detectiving as well, Key Squared. It's one of the things I enjoy the most. So hopefully the fact that I'm getting excited over digging into the border, I wasn't planning on examining the border, but Hannah brought it up, and I think it's amazing. Okay, I am going to read the broadside because I enjoy reading broadsides, but I'm going to take a drink of water first. Yeah, I don't know what happened with the lighting today. The colors are all off, and I'm just, the document camera's fine. It's the camera on me that the colors are wrong. But I didn't have time to address that today. Cabinet making and undertaking. We would respectfully inform the citizens of Rockbridge that we have opened a cabinet shop in Lexington, Virginia, opposite the Presbyterian Church, where we are prepared to fill orders for furniture of every description on the shortest notice. Coffins! Coffins! We are also provided with a neat hearse, and will fill orders for coffins and convey them to any part of the country if desired. The long experience of one of the firm in this business will enable us to guarantee satisfaction to all who need our services. Our prices will be as moderate as the times will allow. Country produce, lumber, etc. will be taken at the market price in exchange for work. August 12, 1865, T.B. Heck, A.D. Elliott, Lexington, Virginia, Gazette Print. I just love, my favorite, aside from now, like the border is my favorite, but of the text itself, just the bold, centered coffins, coffins. I guess we know what they were selling. They were selling coffins. I mean, how else do you advertise coffins? Apparently they also had a neat hearse. What I love is it's advertised as cabinet making and undertaking. They don't actually advertise a service. They say they're prepared to fill orders for furniture of every description, but then they jump straight to coffins. They mention having a hearse. What I'm unclear on is, did they provide a full array of undertaking services, or was it just the cabinet making related undertaking services? Was it just the creation and sale of coffins, as well as their transport via a neat hearse? Or did they do the embalming and other undertaking services as well? And according to the first paragraph, they also made other kinds of furniture, not just coffins. I wonder how much business they got that was not coffin related. Because I mean, unless they were the only cabinet maker around, I probably would not think of them first for like a chair when their ad is all about coffins. I don't know. But I did think that I do think this is a really neat short broadside. You can see on the back, it has been taped a couple of ways. There's some sellotape holding the top on up here, and it looks like possibly like, I think this sellotape was not holding it together. This one to me reads as somebody attempted a repair. This one, I can see, and I'm sure you can as well. At one time, this was folded up into like a long, thin thing, so you can see. I think it was folded up, and this tape was used to keep it closed. I think that's what that piece of sellotape is. What I don't know much about is there's some paper tape used on the corners here. Again, these are repairs. And then there's a piece of, okay, that one's folded over for some reason. Another piece of paper tape, I don't know. But it's been repaired. Honestly, it seems in great condition to me. Maybe possibly because those repairs are being effective in this case. Thankfully, the tape that's on here, even the aged tape, is in decent condition. It's not crumbling. It's not shedding dust everywhere. There's not weird adhesive residue or, yeah, there can be so many issues depending on what the tape is and what the adhesive was. And so the fact that it's got so much tape on the back and it is honestly basically not noticeable until you flip it over is good. Anyway, a lovely little broadside about cabinet making and undertaking from 1865. Let's see. Another of the things, unless somebody has something that they saw on the list that you particularly would like me to share, I'm going to move on to the Carte de Visite. Share. CDV, as you can see in the title of this folder, this is a single folder collection because it's just a really small collection. You can see in the title there, CDV of Buttermilk drinkers, 1864 to 1866, meaning that We know a date range, but we don't know specifically what date it is because it is just a single item. CDV is an abbreviation used by primarily historians, and it means carte de visite. And a carte de visite is a calling card. So it's a fairly standard piece from this time period. Photography has become easy enough to have a card made, and so carte de visite with a photograph is fairly common. This one, I wonder, can I go closer? Full zoom. The problem with going this close, can I get it positioned well? I forgot, I have another monitor that, there, as perfectly positioned as I can be. So, you've got the border. The border is very much like sort of frames that you would see. But this is just an image on a little card. And you've got 5 guys just sort of posing, because at this time, if there's a photograph, it's a posed photograph. There's no such thing as a non-posed photograph in the mid-1860s. They would have had to sit like this for multiple minutes to have this image captured. And in fact, I suspect, so the lower left, the guy over in the lower corner down here, I suspect that the reason that he is slightly blurrier is that he was not as good at holding still. But I don't know for sure. 5 guys, but with buttermilk instead of peanuts. Exactly, he squared. But so this is a lovely little photograph. It being black and white, I cannot tell for certain whether these are Union or Confederate just by looking. I suspect that I know the answer, but I'm also going to check the finding aid because other people will know better than me. Thank you, Key Squared. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Let's see. Abstract. This collection contains a printed image of 5 soldiers gathered around, pouring and drinking buttermilk from a jar, possibly during or shortly after the American Civil War. And that is sort of the extent. Let's see. There's a slightly more elaborate description. Printed image of 5 soldiers gathered around, pouring and drinking buttermilk from a jar, possibly during or shortly after the American Civil War. The man in the center pours a jug while the others hold their cups of buttermilk. One man appears to drink from a very long straw. The image is copied from a tintype or ambrotype. A 2-cent stamp on the back of the image partly obscures part of the name of the printing gallery, which starts with McCabe and, but it is indicated as being in Sydney, Ohio. So that's as much as whoever processed this happened to glean in the amount of time that they had to process it. If somebody wanted to research further, it's probably fairly straightforward to find out what printing company, McCabe and something in Sydney, Ohio. That's probably relatively easy to figure out. finding out who the people in the picture are, probably more difficult. It notes that it's copied from a tintype or ambrotype. Part of the reason we know that is the framing in the photo would have been common on a tintype or an ambrotype. So I don't know, because this item is from the 1860s. So how was it copied? I don't know what copying methods were in use in the middle 1860s. This is, of course, the back. You've got the 2-cent stamp, McCabe and something. Once a stamp is on there, a stamp is on there. It is not really possible to get that stamp off without damaging what it is stuck to. So it's there. I know, because I have researched, hey, can you remove a stamp from a document without damaging the document? You can get the stamp off for sure. And stamp collectors do, but only if you don't care about the document it's stuck to. Sorry, I have to remember I have a tiny little monitor with no delay where I can position the thing much quicker if I just remember it exists. The description from the seller, because again, this is another item that we bought at auction. Carte de visite of a cased image of 5 soldiers and friends, each enjoying a nice cup of buttermilk. The man in the middle looks a little like Larry from the Three Stooges and is pouring from a jug labeled Buttermilk. I personally don't see the resemblance to Larry from the Three Stooges and don't see that it has any relevance to this item, because the Three Stooges were well after the Civil War, and so that is just a little bit of flavor that the auction house added to try and get people interested in the item. The other men stare intensely at the camera, and one appears to have a very long straw in his mouth. This period carte de visite was copied from a tintype or ambrotype in 1864 or 66. There is a 2-cent revenue stamp on the back. So the guy with the really long straw, I don't know. Was it because he wanted to drink the buttermilk while the picture was being taken and could do so with a really long straw? Since they had to sit there for a couple minutes while the picture was taken, I honestly, I don't know what the long straw is for. I sort of suspect that, two of them appear to be in uniform. The others appear to just be in civilian clothing. The 2 over here on the left are wearing uniform jackets, at least. Which tells me that they're probably Union, because the Confederacy did not have a lot of money, and a lot of Confederate soldiers didn't have a uniform. They just wore gray clothes to identify themselves as part of the Confederate Army. The Union soldiers were much more likely to have uniforms. But it being black and white, I have no way to know for sure. But that I suspect. Now, there is what appears to be some sort of rank epaulette on the shoulders of his coat, the guy in back. I'm not familiar enough with Army rankings during the Civil War to know what those are and which army they would belong to. Honestly, I suspect that they would be identical for both armies and would not really tell us any more. So yeah, my suspicion, and based solely on the fact that they have uniform jackets, is that they were probably Union soldiers. Just get this back in its sleeve here. So I don't know where everybody that I've seen in chat today is located. Some of you I know where you're located. Some of you I don't. So I don't know how familiar people are with the American Civil War. I figure most people who grew up in or have been in the United States of America for a while are somewhat familiar with the American Civil War. But I know we have some viewers from outside the USA, and so I don't know who all's here and what you all might know. And then again, I don't know how much the people from the United States of America know about the American Civil War, because I imagine a lot of you didn't grow up like I did within like a 15-minute drive of a Civil War battlefield. Like, I grew up in Northern Virginia, so I grew up surrounded by Civil War battlefields and learned about the Civil War a lot. Like, I learned a lot about it as a kid, because when I was in Boy Scouts, we would go camping at Civil War battlefields, or we would go on trips to the battlefields and see like the little videos that the historic sites had put together about the battles and things like that. So even though it wasn't my favorite topic, I couldn't avoid it. So I know a lot about it. Not nearly as much as is contained in our archives, but I don't know how familiar other people are with it. You talked about it in school, but that was a long time ago, so you don't remember much. And I don't know if they talk about it or why they would talk about it at all outside of the United States. But in Virginia, we definitely learned a lot about it. Because, especially in Northern Virginia, because Virginia was in the Confederacy and Maryland wasn't, and West Virginia wasn't, except that West Virginia was part of Virginia before Virginia seceded, but also Virginia was the capital of the Confederacy. So yeah, we learned a lot about it in school. Interestingly, not super pro-Confederate, the perspective that I got in school. I want to look at the Hardin Collection next, unless somebody wants to throw something else out there. The Charles W. Hardin Collection. This one's more than a single folder. I have a thin box this time. I'm going to pull up the finding aid for myself so that I can see and share a little bit about this collection. All right. Contains professional records and personal correspondence of Charles W. Hardin, a physician from Augusta County, Virginia. I've marked two things in here as being particularly interesting and possible for me to read. That was one of the things I was looking for. That was one of my criteria, was like, can I read their handwriting? Can I figure out what this says? I know we've had fun in the past watching me struggle, but yeah. Let's see. Purchased in 2021. Charles W. Hardin was born circa 1823 in Augusta County, Virginia. He studied medicine at University of Virginia and continued studies in Philadelphia. And by 1848, he practiced medicine in his home county, Sometime after 1860, he moved to Summers, Rockbridge County, Virginia, where he sold general goods. He continued practicing medicine after the Civil War, but expressed dismay over the decline of paying clients in post-war rural Virginia. He and his wife had several children, including a daughter named Minta Hardin and a son named Willie. Hardin died in 1899 at the age of 85. Professional records and personal correspondence of Charles W. Hardin, a physician from Augusta County, Virginia, includes 2 ledgers with notes related to patients Hardin treated, including enslaved people prior to the American Civil War. It also includes letters to family members and attorneys. Topics discussed include family health, financial troubles for physicians in Virginia after the Civil War, and an ongoing property dispute following the sale of his mother's land during the Civil War. The collection also includes 2 poems and a drafted debate response defending the importance of women's education. Yes, indeed, historical terms. There are definitely historical terms that may be encountered. The first item that I marked to look at is a letter from the Department of the Interior Census Office. Because I had not previously seen one of these this old, and so I thought it was kind of neat. Of course, an identification number for the government publication that this is, that would be from the GPO, the Government Printing Office, I assume. Department of the Interior, Census Office, Washington, D.C., May 15th, 1890. 11th Census of the United States. Special classes there because this is not a standard census letter. You were reading the first bit of the letter, and it definitely has historical terms. Yes, it does. So this is part of the official 11th Census of the United States. And so if you're familiar with the U.S. Census, from the time that it was initiated, the census is taken every 10 years. I don't know and have never looked, so that would be why I don't know. I don't know for certain when it was officially started. But we get the impression that it just started spontaneously with the creation of the country. But the U.S. Census is a census that is legally mandated by the Constitution of the United States. It takes place every 10 years. The first, after the American Revolution, was taken in 1790. So here we are 100 years later with census number 11. There have been 23 since that time. The most recent in 2020. So, dear doctor, I venture to ask your assistance in making the reports of the census, which is to be taken on the 1st of next June, as complete as possible in certain matters which are of special interest to the medical profession. Each census enumerator, in making a list of the living population, is expected to give the name, age, sex, color, occupation, and whether the person is in some way disabled, Yeah, I'm not going to read through that entire list. There are a lot of words there for various forms of disability, including mental impairments, as well as physical sensory or other physical disabilities. that they apparently were supposed to list for anybody that, and they were asking this of a physician. And so they're asking specifically for that, for a person who, so any of these listed conditions of mental illness or physical deformity or physical sensory impairment, or someone affected with acute or chronic disease or the results of injury as to be unable to pursue his usual business. So that is something that the census in 1890 was concerned with. It is quite certain that the enumerator's returns will only give imperfect information upon these latter points. Many persons will be unwilling to admit that a family member, or that a member of the family has a mental or sensory impairment, even if such is the case, and the reports as to the kinds of sickness afflicting persons will also be very unsatisfactory as derived from enumerators' returns. To remedy this and to obtain as complete a record as possible of that portion of the population which is more or less physically disabled. I'm not going to say it's not even a bad word there. It's just the context that makes it bad. Wow. To remedy this and to obtain as complete a record as possible of that portion of the population which is more or less physically disabled, I ask every physician in the United States to fill out lists of names on the form herewith enclosed and return them to this office, where they can be compared with the lists furnished by the enumerators. So the enumerators are the people who physically went door to door to count every person. Will you please, therefore, fill out these lists for the persons of your acquaintance or in whose families you practice, giving the names, etc., of those you know to have a mental impairment, physical sensory impairment, or physical deformity, and return these schedules in the enclosed envelope, which does not require postage. I have made the items called for as few as possible in order to give you the least amount of trouble. It is essential to have the name, the sex, the color, and the approximate age, the place of residence, and also the name of the householder of whose family the person is a member, in order to identify the name on the enumerator's lists. If you can give the number or the enumeration district, this will make it a very simple matter to identify. You need have no fear of duplication by returning names which other physicians may return, because all returns from the same locality will be carefully compared and all duplicate returns put aside. The special information called for on each of these schedules, which pertains more especially to the province of the medical man, is the one in which I am specifically desirous of having your statement. That is, for the people with a mental impairment, the nature of said impairment. For the people with a sensory impairment, the nature of the disease that caused that sensory impairment. For the deformed, the nature of the deformity. I don't like that word. I don't know a better one. If you do, I'd take the advice. Those suffering from sickness or from the effects of injury, the nature of the disease or injury. I can offer no pecuniary compensation for the information thus asked, and can only appeal to you as a physician to furnish your quota of help toward making the statistics of the sick and physically... Wow, hello word. The statistics of the sick and physically impaired. in the United States more complete and more useful than they have ever been before. So many words, so many historical terms in this letter from the United States Department of the Interior in 1890. That said, these words would not have been considered offensive at the time. These words were considered to be generic, descriptive, even scientific terms. Over time, they gained they fell out of favor because they have negative connotations, judgmental connotations, and just generally are derogatory. But they are so because they were used by people who did not see people with these characteristics as being people. Yeah, there was a reason you threw up the command. Thank you, Hannah, for that. I will say this one was one of the more challenging to try and read without accidentally saying words that I didn't want to say. And some of these words are not necessarily bad. Some of them are, even today, considered just descriptive and not really derogatory, but like when taken in a list like this, And like toward the end, the word that I didn't want to say in context was imperfection. Because wow, hello eugenics in the middle of my 11th United States Census. The idea of perfection with regard to physical body or mental state is very eugenicsy. Fascinating. I had never seen a census invitation letter this old. I had never personally seen a special classes letter. But what I find fascinating is this letter is asking for very specific medical information about people who are to be identified by name. And I understand it from like a census taker's perspective, like we need these specifics. And so like for the sake of accuracy of the census, we need to know who it is that you're sending this information about. Apparently this was a characteristic they were looking for and wanted gathered for the 1890 census. I don't know, I don't remember seeing questions about this sort of thing on the 2020 census, but honestly I don't remember if this kind of information was collected or not. And I haven't paid attention to look for this kind of information on the readily available census data sets. So I don't honestly know if they're still collecting this kind of information. If they are, I would be really curious to see how people interpret it over time, given the changes in how we talk about these things, the differences in terminology used between then and now. It's just really interesting to me. So when I was glancing through and looking at things, I was like, ooh, this is unique. I've not seen this before. And so I thought it would be interesting to share. I am also really curious about, in this country today, we have this idea of doctor-patient confidentiality and that the doctor should not share your medical information except under very specific circumstances. The US Census, to my knowledge, is not counted in those circumstances today. I do know that if a court orders a doctor to share personal medical details about someone, that is one of the circumstances. And this being a government agency requesting the information, would that be similar? My initial feeling is no, but I also don't know when the doctor-patient confidentiality idea was introduced. So I'd be curious about that, because I'm not certain. When did doctor-patient confidentiality, when was that idea invented? And I am now looking. According to the National Institutes of Health of the United States of America, in 1936-1937, Graham Little made a second attempt to introduce legislation, let's see, to protect medical confidentiality with a bill which was almost identical to his bill of 1927. It also failed to convince Parliament. This is, it's interesting that that's where it dumped me in. Okay, but so that is not helpful. The concept of doctor-patient confidentiality derives from English common law and is codified in many states' statutes. It is based on ethics, not law, and goes at least as far back as the Roman Hippocratic Oath taken by physicians, different from doctor-patient privilege, which is a legal concept. This from Encyclopedia Britannica. Both, however, are called upon in legal matters to establish the extent by which ethical duties of a confidentiality apply to legal privilege. Legal privilege involves the right to withhold evidence from discovery and/or the right to refrain from disclosing or divulging information gained within the context of a special relationship. Special relationships include those between doctors and patients, attorneys and clients, priests and confessors or confiders, guardians and their wards, etc. The oath of Hippocrates, traditionally sworn by newly licensed physicians, includes the promise that, quote, whatever in connection with my professional service be spoken of, whatever in connection with my professional service, or not in connection with it, I see or hear in the life of men which ought not to be spoken of abroad, I will not divulge, as reckoning that all such should be kept secret. The laws of Hippocrates further provide, quote, those things which are sacred are to be imparted only to sacred persons, and it is not lawful to impart them to the profane until they have been initiated into the mysteries of the science. So, legally in the US, Sim Silica, the HIPAA Act of 96, I think it existed in the US before then. That might be what governs it today. But I'd be surprised if it wasn't around before then. Huh. No duty of confidence. Yeah. It has to be a bona fide relationship. Constitutional right to privacy. A fundamental right to privacy guaranteed by the 5th and 14th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution protects against unwanted invasions of privacy by federal or state entities or arms thereof, as early as in Roe versus Wade, 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court acknowledged that the doctor-patient relationship is one which evokes constitutional rights of privacy, but even that right is not absolute and must be weighed against the state or federal interest at stake. For example, in Wallen versus Roe, 1977, a group of physicians joined patients in a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of a New York statute that required physicians to report to state authorities the identities of patients receiving Schedule II drugs. The physicians alleged that such information was protected by the doctor-patient confidentiality, while the patients alleged that such disclosure was an invasion of the constitutional right to privacy. The Supreme Court did not disagree with the lower court's finding that, quote, the intimate nature of a patient's concern about his bodily ills and the medication he takes are protected by the constitutional right to privacy. Interesting. I guess that would be why they keep track of people who take ADHD meds, because those are Schedule II. Wow. It still doesn't tell me when it came into effect in the US, because it would seem to me like what was noted in here about yeah, I don't know. It seems to me like, it just seemed weird to me that the US Census would include a request for this very specific medical information. Since 1974, numerous federal laws. Okay. Increased privacy precautions. So 96, yeah. Traces back to the Hippocratic Oath. I'm on Wikipedia now. Huh. I don't know. I would be interested to pin down exactly and it'll be different for different countries. Canada, Turkey, UK, US. Since 1974, numerous federal laws have been passed in the United States to specify the privacy rights and protections of patients, and the most comprehensive one being the 96 one. Interesting to me that it's like this only talks about it from 1974 on. So clearly 1890, well before the time that it was being handled from a legal sense in the US, which I guess is the extent of what I need to know. We don't need to pin down specifics at this point, but the government asking for medical details on the census in 1890, yeah, their concept of what doctors should or could keep private would have been different than ours. Anyway, the other item from here that I wanted to look at was this item, a drafted debate response defending the importance of women's education. That sounds excellent and was not something I was expecting to find in an American Civil War collection. So this medical professional here, Charles W. Hardin, wrote this, and now you get to see me read actually some very legible Civil War era cursive writing. Question for debate: is the education of the sexes equally important? Mr. President, or Chairman, as the case may be, as I am on the affirmative side of this debate, I should think it important that the female, should have a liberal education equal to the male, from the fact that in no other respect has there been such revolution of sentiment and laws as in regard to the rights of women and her relations to the body politic as within the present generation. She occupies hundreds of positions now that was closed to her a quarter of century ago. She preaches and preaches law and medicine. Thousands of females fills government positions, many of them important ones. More than 3/4 of the teachers of the land are ladies crossed out and replaced with females. In fact, all female schools, and in the primary schools, nearly all the teachers are women. Yeah. I had to look close to see if, because the grammar isn't perfect, and so I had to look close to see if that was an S on the end of that or a period. I think it's a period. In the retail stores devoted to dry goods and notions dry goods and notions and light kinds of trade, they almost monopolize the sale and clerk departments. The new business of typewriting, telegraphy, and stenography have opened up a wide field to them. It is no exaggeration to say that there is in businesses outside of common household duties 50 women where there was one 50 years ago. With the widening of their circles of occupation, there has been a corresponding recognition of their privileges and rights. And I cannot see why the female should not receive as liberal education as the, quote, lords of creation, unquote. Men may object or argue against and ridicule the idea, but they cannot resist the inevitable. The extension and advancement of female education takes no step backwards. Women are fast obtaining substantial recognition by the English government as well as our own. There are, I think, wait. Nope, it's thy have. It looks like it's crossed out, which was confusing me, sorry. Thy have women members of the Board of Education and various other important bodies. I should think women with proper educational advantages equal to the male would be prominent factors in the affairs of mating. Already, there is talk of making them ambassadors to foreign countries. How nice it would be, Mr. President, if some of our female friends should receive an appointment from the highest officer of the nation as Minister Explenipotentiary to the Court of St. James. that's the entirety of what is written there. I was like, I also didn't expect to find something like this in a Civil War collection, and I think it's interesting. I don't have a date, sadly. It is undated, but it is definitely in that like Civil War era time frame, because this entire collection is between 1823 and 1899. So sometime in the 19th century, this like written response to the debate prompt, is the education of the sexes equally important, was prepared by Dr. Charles Hardin. And the entire argument is essentially established here as, well, look, women's rights are moving forward no matter what we do. So you can be mad about it, but it's going to happen. And wouldn't you rather have a woman who's educated taking on these roles that they're taking on anyway? Like, they're teachers, they're working in government, they're ambassadors to foreign countries. Wouldn't you rather they be educated when taking on these roles? Which isn't a terrible argument. I think there are other, probably better arguments, but this one's not a terrible one for why women deserve to be educated. I feel like there should be more to it, and there's just not. I don't know. It ends in the middle of a page, so I assume it's not missing anything. But it just sort of cuts off, like, how nice it would be, Mr. President, if some of our female friends should receive an appointment from the highest officer of the nation as Minister ex Plenipotentiary to the Court of St. James. That doesn't feel like a summation. That doesn't feel like the end of a debate argument. But I agree. Wouldn't it be great if some women were appointed as Minister ex Plenipotentiary to the Court of St. James, which I assume is ambassador to England? If anybody does know for certain, I would love clarification on that. I could look it up, but if you know, please share. Anyway, this was one of the more interesting things that I was just like, ooh, this is really cool. I like this item. I want to share this item. I know there's like stuff about like Civil War battles in that collection. There's definite like very Civil War related things in that collection. This is the thing that caught my eye. Also, that caught my eye. Hello, welcome to the stream, 16-bit Eric and the, wow, my brain quit. Whimsies, welcome in, Whimsies. Let me give a shout out here to 16-bit Eric. Welcome everybody to Archival Adventures. It is great to see you all. I think I have done this correctly. And yes, you as well. 16-bit Eric joins us fairly regularly on Wednesdays, and we appreciate it. Today, I am looking at some of the new additions to our collections about the American Civil War. There has been some historical terminology present, especially with regards to disability. But I just had a spectacular time reading a letter or a response prepared in preparation for a debate on the question, is the education of the sexes equally important? And this is the yes response, which is wonderful. Oh, 123 Ricardo 210, welcome and thank you for the follow. So I'm not going to reread the entire letter right now, but I love that the ending, I'll just read like the final paragraph one more time before we're going to look at some other things, because this will be in the VOD if you want to see the entire letter. But let me say one last time, welcome Whimsies. Thank you, Eric. It's great to see you. I hope that the end of your stream went well. I hope that the game is continuing to be just as amazing as it was last night and the beginning of stream. And it's lovely having you join. Whimsies, it's great having you here. I really appreciate you joining. Okay, letter from the 19th century from a doctor in rural Virginia regarding the education of women. I should think that women with proper educational advantages equal to the male would be prominent factors in the affairs of mating. Already there is talk of making them ambassadors to foreign countries. How nice it would be, Mr. President, if some of our female friends should receive an appointment from the highest office of the nation as Minister ex Plenipotentiary to the Court of St. James. I personally feel, and was saying this when you arrived, that there should be more. Like, that doesn't feel like the end of a debate argument to me. But also, I appreciate the sentiment. Yes. Yes, it would be nice. Yeah. It was one of the little gems that I found as I was. It's just in miscellaneous writing in this collection, because it isn't specifically about his medical practice or the American Civil War or anything like that. It just happened to be a letter that was included. But to me, I'm like, hey, look, this is about equal education of women. This is an amazing piece. Like, and it is called out in like the description. Whoever processed the collection, our grad student, definitely recognized that it was worthy of note. So it's in a folder labeled miscellaneous because that folder contains miscellaneous, but the fact that the letter is there is noted. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known it was there. I saw that in the description. I was like, I want to see this letter. What is this letter? And it's a good one. I enjoyed it. Let's see, what do we have next? George W. Shue Diary Pages. Oh, this is the one that I was like, in my notes, I said, hard to read. It's a highlight, but it's hard to read. Maybe you all can help me. All right, let's find out who this George Shue person is. George W. Shue Diary Pages, 1862 to 1863, so smack dab in the middle of the American Civil War. Biographical note. The extent of what we know about George W. Shue, or the extent of what the person who processed this knew about George W. Shue, is George W. Shue was an American Civil War soldier from Wisconsin. We probably have books that would help us to find out some more. Contains the diary of George Shue, an American Civil War soldier from Wisconsin. Shue wrote about the Battle of Malvern Hill, Second Battle of Fredericksburg, and Pittsburgh Landing, as well as his daily life as a soldier and news about significant events like the capture of New Orleans. Of Malvern Hill, Shue wrote, quote, "Our brave boys was fighting hard and long, still the enemy was obstinate and strong, which let our generals know they was holding their ground and if reinforced, they would compel us to fall back, unquote. So I don't know. I don't dive into American Civil War like letters and documents like this too much myself. Which also just means that I'm terribly unpracticed at reading 1860s cursive. So I will do my best. But if anybody here is better at reading this person's 1860s cursive, do help me. I love that this one seems to have like a stamp on the page, and that the stamp is in red and blue ink. Like, of course, yes, 1860s, stamp technology existed. This is the first time I've seen a stamp of this nature with two different ink colors in casual use on a letter from the mid-1860s. I haven't seen this before. Doesn't mean it isn't common. It's just that I don't have a ton of experience with letters from the Civil War, and it just struck me as interesting. Let's see. Capture of New Orleans. So hard to make out these words. A desperate Oh, hi, lady. Hi, Lady Helser. How are you? A desperate streamer trying to make out cursive from 1862. Sorry. Is it desperate? It looks like desperate. But then what is the next word? A dispatch. It's dispatch. A dispatch something something in yesterday from General Poole and McDowell. See, oh no. A dispatch I still can't make out that. It looks like R-E-C-R-A-R, but that doesn't make sense to me. And then the next word is Washington, broken into 3 parts. And then yesterday, from General Poole and McDowell, conveys the or that, I'm not certain yet, the impressive and exhilarating, I think, information that the city of New Orleans has fallen into the hands of the Union. The Union troops. Yep, troops. Because, so, if you haven't seen old cursive before, this is definitely the word troops. The T is, I did not mean to zoom out, I apologize. You have the line for the T, and then above the double O here is the cross for the T, that in no way intersects the vertical line of the T, which is diagonal, but that's beside the point. All right, so New Orleans has fallen into the hands of the Union troops and is once again under the dominion of the United States government. The Petersburg Express, I think, no, the no, it is Petersburg, yeah. The Petersburg Express of Saturday last and the Richmond Examiner of the same day announces that at an early hour on Thursday morning, our troop passed Fort Jackson, and ran. I don't know what this is. It's not ran. But anyway, it's past Fort Jackson and route for New Orleans. I'm not certain of the R word there. If I was transcribing this, I would put a question mark after it. The advance creating the most another word I'm not getting. INT something. Intense. Creating the most intense excitement and consternation and was entirely, business was entirely suspended. This is not super easy. This letter, this handwriting is actually somewhat difficult to read for me, but I'm getting the gist, at least. All right, I'm going to try and summarize here. Capture of New Orleans. A dispatch I still have no idea what that word is. Oh, nope, I got it. I have got it. A dispatch received at Washington yesterday from General Poole and McDowell conveys the important and exhilarating information that the city of New Orleans has fallen into the hands of the Union troops and is once again under the dominion of the United States government. the Petersburg Express of Saturday last, and the Richmond Examiner of the same day announces that at an early hour on Thursday morning, our troops passed Fort Jackson on route for New Orleans. The advance creating the most intense excitement and consternation, and business was entirely suspended. The torch of the incendiary was applied to all the coffee in the city, and all of the coffee in the city and something. Hang on. The torch of the incendiary was applied to all of the coffee in the city and vicinity, and such of the steamboats as were not required for the conscription of transportation, not conscription, as were not required for the transportation of ammunition and coin, were also destroyed. They burned all the coffee in New Orleans. Just, wow. Just burn all of the coffee. The information, although emanating from I don't know, source and Milton Lee something, I'm not sure, can doubtless be relied upon. So these are, it's naming some people, and I don't know who they are. They haven't been mentioned before, and I can't exactly make out their names at the moment. But it's saying, despite coming from these people, this information can be relied upon. Our last something. I think it's anticipated advance from Ship Island. Something 6 informs us that General Butler was at, was as I can't make out that word right now either. Something busily as north, preparing his forces for the advance on New Orleans. He was as much such large expeditions. Some mistakes had been made in regard to supplies which were not rectified with possible alacrity, I think it says. The force under General Butler was about 10,000 strong. Nope. It's not 10,000. I think it's 15,000 strong. He was also accompanied by the mortar something. It looks like FL something. I'm not familiar with this word either. This happens. Also accompanied by the mortar something under command of Commander D.D. Porter, U.S. Navy, comprising 30 vessels and 2,000 men. One by one are the cities of the South being compelled to acknowledge the supremacy of the United States government and the capture of the New Orleans locality in the rebel realm could tend so much to demoralize them something. I don't know what this is, a mighty, but there's no T, so I'm not sure what it is. And to show them the utter hopelessness of success as that of the Lonesome City, I think it says. I'm not sure. But, wow. I did note, hard to read on my list of highlights, and indeed it was, but I think we got the gist of it. Sorry it was so stilted. Usually I try to do a little transcription ahead of time. I just did not have time, and it didn't come with a transcription. I think it was interesting. It reads more like it reads sort of like a correspondence letter, like somebody who was traveling with the army but was there to send back notes to be published in newspapers or something. That's what it reads like to me. It's like a reporter's account of it. It's really interesting. Very definitely, this person did not like the Confederate people and was just because, boy, it talks about the supremacy of the United States quite a bit. Multiple times it's mentioned in there. And I think it was interesting. There's just a couple of little quirks to his handwriting, and it's the pencil lead on the paper has faded somewhat over time, so that it just was a little difficult to make out. Usually I try to read it from the screen. It's that little bit of change was making it too washed out for me to really make out the words, and I was like, I ended up having to lean over and actually like look at the document itself. I have a fan on and it's trying to blow that page, so I'm gonna close the folder. Anyway, that I thought was kind of interesting. I don't have time. I had a lovely certificate about discharging somebody from service in the Civil War. I also have, I'll show it to you. We're not going to have time to read an entry because we are at the end of time, but I have the USS Dacotah Blockade Journal, 1862 to 1863. Come on, camera. Focus. And I believe this is just like a captain's like journal from a ship. Like this is the ship's log, if I'm correct in my interpretation. I also have a full freaking transcript to this one. I should have read this one, but I forgot what it was. So you can see it's been given a box and it's been given a not attached, just as a folder, sort of, a cover, because this is the actual like journal or log. Zoom out a little. Oh, I would zoom out a little, but the camera has done that thing again. So rather than zooming out, let me reposition, because we're at the end. I'm not gonna like spend the time to restart the camera. But my controls have frozen and I can't zoom out. Anyway, it's a ship's log in here. Handwritten ship's log from blockade duty. And again, this would have been really hard for me to read, but this one came with a typed transcript. I may try to look for some highlights in here and maybe do a blog post on this at some point in time. Or if people are really interested in seeing this ship's log in the future, let me know, because I could bring it back for a future stream. We could, spend an entire stream looking at this ship's log if we wanted to, or I could look for other similar items or something along those lines. But we have gone over by about 9 minutes at this point, so I should probably get round to wrapping things up. Just check and make sure that I know what I'm doing. Let's bring it back here for a second so that I can say thank you very, very much for joining me today for what turned out to be a much more fun episode than I was expecting. I don't often dive into the American Civil War collections on the stream here, mostly because I don't know a whole lot about them, and it's war, and we have a lot more fun with like science and things like that. But I think this was fun, and I might look for some more potentially interesting collections and just see what we can find from American Civil War stuff in future if people are up for that. Let me, I was gonna tell you all what's coming up next week. I just have to get there. Yeah, the ship's log does seem cool. Sadly, I ran out of time today. So I'm fairly certain I'm gonna bring that one back in the future because it does seem cool. Oh, Rank, thank you for watching and for modding over on the library's channel. Coming up next week is High Energy Physics series, looking at the Collins Cosmotron correspondence. Collins was the director of the Cosmotron project at the Brookhaven Institute, I believe. And so I've got those papers queued up for our High Energy Physics series episode next week. And then I've got 2 episodes planned for June, and then a couple of weeks in a row, I think like 4 or 5 weeks in a row, that I am taking a break because I have some stuff that has to get done this summer and won't have the time to devote to planning the episodes. So there's about a month that there won't be episodes, which freaks me out. But yeah, a couple more episodes coming up for the rest of June. June 14th will be the last one before having to move off to do something else. Let me see where we want to go today. Well, I mean, Stephen is on doing power washing again. Monterey Bay Aquarium is on spider crab cam, it looks like. Penny Arcade is on. Just trying to see who we might want to see. And I don't know what that is. Yeah, everybody's doing gaming except for the aquarium. So I say we go and have a chill time with some power washing because I like saying hi to Stephen. Come on. I can type. So if you would like to join for that raid, it would be appreciated. Stephen is a wonderful streamer from Scotland, and we raid in over there pretty regularly. Wears lovely tiny hats. It's a wonderful community, and Power Wash Simulator is a really chill game, so a great way to just sort of hang out for the rest of your Wednesday. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope that I will see you again soon for a future archives stream or one of my personal gaming streams. But it is great to have you all here, and yeah, hope I see you again soon. Until I do, keep exploring history, everybody.